In modern politics, your digital footprint is basically a ticking time bomb.
Oh, absolutely. It's always just waiting to go off.
Right. Like you build a campaign, you shake the hands, you kiss the babies, and you curate this, this bulletproof image of a patriotic public servant.
Yeah, the classic political resident.
Exactly. But what happens when that bomb detonates? And the shrapnel flying in every direction includes a Nazi tattoo, cheerleading for Antifa violence, and just a truly visceral, disturbing attack on a wounded American soldier.
Wow. Yeah, that is quite the combination of shrapnel.
It really is. And what if all of that belongs to a single Democratic candidate running for the United States Senate?
I mean, that is just a political implosion on a completely different level.
It is. Today, we are looking at an implosion so severe and honestly so bizarre that the man credited with killing Osama bin Laden felt compelled to step into the fray and issue a public condemnation.
Yeah, that's when you know it's a massive deal.
Totally. So for our deep dive today, we are operating exclusively from a May 21, 2026 report published by Fox News Digital.
Right, the Andrew Mark Miller piece.
Yes, written by Andrew Mark Miller, titled Navy SEAL Who Killed Bin Laden Rips Main Candidate Platner for Hateful Post About a Soldier.
And before we get into the weeds here, I think it's super important to set some ground rules for you, the listener.
Yeah, definitely. Lay it out.
Because we are dealing with a cocktail of, extreme far-right and far-left ideologies today, intersecting with a highly contested political race. Our job isn't to play judge, jury, or ethicist.
Right, we're not here to take sides.
Exactly. We're acting purely as forensic analysts. We're looking exclusively at the reporting provided to dissect the mechanics of how a scandal of this magnitude operates.
Like how the military community polices its own, right?
Yes, and how the political machinery calculates its survival when a candidate's hidden history suddenly becomes public record. We're not endorsing any viewpoints or taking sides at all. We are simply mapping the anatomy of the controversy.
I think that's super important to keep in mind because the blast radius of this story is just wild. It starts with Graham Platner.
Right, the candidate at the center of all this.
Yeah, he is a Democratic candidate running for the U.S. Senate in Maine. And the foundational pillar of his public profile is his status as a combat veteran.
Which is usually a massive asset in politics.
Oh, massive. When a voter sees combat veteran on a ballot, they immediately project a certain set of assumptions.
Discipline, sacrifice, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Unit cohesion and a baseline of, patriotic reverence. But the unearthing of Platner's online history completely incinerates those assumptions.
It just burns it all to the ground.
It really does. I heard a digital footprint described once as invisible ink.
Oh, I like that. That's a great way to put it.
Right. But the problem with this invisible ink is that it lacks timestamps, it lacks tone, and it lacks context.
Yeah, and then someone turns on the black light.
Exactly. When the black light is finally turned on, the voter sees a 10-year-old late-night rant and a polished policy speech from yesterday as happening, simultaneously.
They exist on the same flat plane for the voter.
Yes. And the specific post that triggered this entire news cycle is just staggering.
Yeah, tell them about the Reddit post.
So, according to the Fox News report, a viral video was circulating showing an American soldier wounded during a clash with Taliban fighters.
A pretty harrowing thing to watch, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. And underneath that video of a bleeding American service member, Platner allegedly commented, and I'm quoting here, "Dumb mother didn't deserve to live."
It's hard to even process that a combat veteran would write that.
I know. It's totally baffling.
To understand the sheer magnitude of that statement, you really have to look at the psychological phenomenon known as context collapse.
Context collapse. Break that down a bit.
Yeah, so the internet creates this centralized vacuum where the different arenas of your life, like your professional ambitions, your private frustrations, your worst impulses, they are all smashed into a single flat viewing surface.
Right. There's no separation anymore.
Exactly. When a combat veteran sees a video of another soldier wounded in action, the expected response, conditioned by years of military training, is empathy or, anger at the enemy.
Sure, that brotherhood instinct kicks in.
Right. To mock the wounded soldier requires profound detachment. It suggests a mindset that has been completely subsumed by internet culture.
Where people just say things for shock value?
Precisely. In that culture, the primary currency is shock value and transgression, rather than real-world empathy. The screen acts as this a dissociative barrier.
So the soldier isn't even a person to him in that moment.
Exactly. The wounded soldier ceases to be a human being and becomes mere content to be reacted to, ridiculed, or leveraged for engagement on a message board.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense, sadly. But the detachment goes so far beyond a single twisted comment on a video.
Oh, the report gets into so much
Oh,
more.
he does. The Fox News digital report details this like scatter plot of incendiary material that defies any logical, ideological grouping.
And all over the map.
Completely. There is a resurfaced video where Platner disparages Chris Kyle.
And for context for the listener, Chris Kyle is widely known as the American Sniper.
Right, a figure of almost mythical reverence in certain veteran circles. And Platner suggests that Kyle intentionally killed civilians simply to inflate his confirmed kill numbers.
Which is an incredibly heavy accusation to throw around.
Yeah, that alone would be a career-ending scandal for a veteran politician. But then the pendulum swings wildly.
This is where it gets really confusing.
Right. The report notes Platner showing support for Antifa violence.
Yeah.
He allegedly wrote, kill a mother for her.
So we have far-left extremist rhetoric.
Yes. And he praises vulgar graffiti. There is a mention of a crude porta potty admission, whatever that entails.
It's gross, but okay.
Yeah. And then sitting right alongside the far-left Antifa rhetoric, the report mentions he allegedly has a Nazi tattoo on his chest.
I mean, how does that even happen?
I cannot wrap my head around this. From a psychological or even strategic standpoint, how do you map cheering on far-left violence and sporting far-right Nazi iconography onto the same person? It completely breaks the spectrum.
It does break the spectrum, but only because you're trying to apply a cohesive political framework to behavior that is fundamentally anti-political.
Anti-political. What do you mean by that?
Well, in modern online subcultures, especially those rooted in anonymity or extreme message boards, ideology is often a costume. It's worn purely for its transgressive power.
Oh, so they don't actually believe the ideology.
Exactly. The individual isn't adopting a Nazi tattoo or Antifa rhetoric because they have deeply studied and aligned themselves with those respective political philosophies.
They just want to get a rise out of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are adopting them because those symbols represent the ultimate taboos in polite society. It is the politics of pure provocation.
Okay, that makes sense. It's just trolling in real life.
Pretty much. What we are observing in Platner's alleged digital history is a profile of someone driven by chaos, nihilism, or a deep-seated urge to shock rather than a coherent worldview.
Right. But then you take that guy and put him in a Senate race.
And the collision is catastrophic. When this individual transitions into the highly structured, hyper-scrutinized world of a U.S. Senate campaign, the electorate demands consistency and predictability.
Sure, they want to know what they're voting for.
Right. A voter can disagree with a far-left candidate or a far-right candidate, but a candidate who embodies both simultaneously reads as fundamentally unstable.
Unstable is definitely the word. And the irony of a veteran attacking a wounded soldier online is that the sharpest, most devastating backlash was never going to come from a political rival in a debate.
No, a political rival would just use it as a standard talking point.
Exactly, just another attack ad. The true reckoning was going to come from inside the house.
From the military community itself.
Yes. Enter Robert O'Neill.
And when you hear the name Robert O'Neill, you are talking about the U.S. Navy SEAL, credited with pulling the trigger in the raid that killed Osama bin Laden.
The cultural weight that he carries is just massive, especially among veterans and conservatives.
Oh, absolutely. People listen when he speaks.
They really do. And his reaction to Platner's comment about the wounded soldier wasn't just a political disagreement, it was visceral disgust.
Yeah, he didn't mince words.
Not at all. He called the post barbaric, he called it vile hatred, and said it was way out of line. O'Neill is stepping in not as a pundit, but as an enforcer of an unwritten code.
That code is so central to this whole thing. The mechanism of military unit cohesion is built on the systematic dismantling of the individual ego.
Right, breaking you down to build you back up as a team.
Exactly. From the first day of basic training, the military apparatus is designed to convince you that your survival is entirely dependent on the person standing next to you.
And vice versa.
Yes, and their survival is entirely dependent on you. O'Neill articulates this perfectly in the report. He explains that when you deploy, politics goes out the window.
Which is how it has to be, I'd imagine.
It does. You aren't a Democrat or a Republican in a firefight. You are a mechanism of mutual defense. Therefore, to look at a fellow service member taking enemy fire, bleeding in the dirt, and to express the sentiment that they didn't deserve to live is the deepest possible heresy within that culture.
Heresy is a great word for it. It's a complete betrayal.
It is. O'Neill's reaction is basically the immunological response of the veteran community. He is publicly excommunicating Platner, signaling to the broader public that this behavior is not representative of the uniform they both wore.
It's an existential boundary being drawn in real time.
Exactly.
O'Neill also specifically zeroes in on Platner's disparagement of Chris Kyle.
Right, the American Sniper comments.
Yeah. O'Neill attributes the attack on Kyle to pure jealousy. He suggests Platner was resentful of Kyle's fame, his book sales, his movie adaptation, and his high number of confirmed sniper kills.
Which is really interesting, because O'Neill notes that this kind of jealousy is rare.
Yes, that's what fascinates me. He explicitly notes that this kind of professional jealousy is incredibly rare among veterans.
Yeah.
Because if you look at any other highly competitive field law, finance, professional sports jealousy, and trash talk about top performers are the absolute norm.
Oh, for sure. It's expected.
So why is the psychological economy of prestige so heavily policed in special operations or broader veteran community?
Well, in the civilian world, prestige is usually a zero-sum game tied to market share or individual wealth, right? If you win, someone else loses.
Sure.
But in the combat arms community, prestige, specifically the kind of prestige Chris Kyle achieved, is tied directly to lethal efficacy in defense of the unit.
It's about saving lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kyle's high number of confirmed kills isn't viewed by the military community as a high score in a video game. It is viewed as a quantifiable metric of how many American lives he saved by eliminating threats.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. So to attack that legacy out of jealousy, as O'Neill alleges Platner is doing, implies a fundamental misunderstanding of the assignment.
It makes it seem like he was just in it for himself.
Right. It suggests Platner views military service as a vehicle for individual fame rather than collective sacrifice. O'Neill points out the rarity of this jealousy because the shared trauma of combat usually burns away that kind of petty, individualistic striving.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when a veteran breaks that mold and attempts to tear down a highly decorated peer for clout, it signals to the rest of the community that the individual's internal compass is pointed entirely toward themselves.
Man, that is a brutal assessment. So, if you are the Platner campaign, you are looking at a 5-alarm fire.
Oh, a total disaster.
You have a national hero publicly excommunicating your candidate and a digital footprint that reads like a psychology textbook's chapter on antisocial behavior.
And you can't exactly walk it back.
No, you can't just delete the post and pretend it didn't happen. The internet archives everything. You have to mount a defense.
And the defense they chose is complicated.
Yeah, according to the Fox News report, the defense strategy is bifurcated. And quite frankly, it seems deeply contradictory.
Very much so. Let's get into that.
On one hand, Platner has leaned heavily into his struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder to explain the incendiary social media posts.
Right, the PTSD defense.
Yeah. The argument is that this isn't his true character. It's the manifestation of severe psychological trauma sustained in service to his country.
Which is a very serious issue, obviously.
Of course. But simultaneously, the report notes that some of Platner's allies are trying to wave away the comments as mere locker room talk.
Which completely undermines the PTSD claim.
You cannot have it both ways. You can't claim these posts are the tragic symptom of a profound psychiatric wound and in the next breath say, oh, it's just the boys blowing off steam online.
The contradiction you're highlighting exposes the desperate improvisation of modern crisis communications.
They're just throwing things at the wall.
Exactly. When a scandal breaks, the immediate instinct of a campaign is to throw multiple narratives at the wall and see which one resonates with different demographics.
So the locker room talk is for one crowd and PTSD for another.
Right. The locker room talk defense is aimed at a cynical, highly partisan base that assumes all politicians say terrible things in private and just wants to hold the Senate seat.
Yeah, the everyone does it crowd.
But the PTSD defense is entirely different. It is an attempt to weaponize the public's inherent sympathy for veterans.
It flips the script.
It does. It shifts the candidate from the role of the aggressor, the guy mocking wounded soldiers, into the role of the victim.
Wow. That's a bold strategy.
The strategy relies on the hope that the public will be too intimidated by the complexities of combat trauma to harshly judge the behavior. It forces the electorate into a deeply uncomfortable position.
Like, if you condemn Platner, are you condemning all veterans who struggle with mental health?
Exactly. It's a trap.
But Robert O'Neill refuses to be backed into that corner.
No, he cuts right through it.
He really does, with a scalpel. He says, and I'm quoting here, PTSD shouldn't do that to you, especially if you do it again and again.
Which is a huge distinction.
He is drawing a hard line between the recognized symptoms of trauma Hypervigilance, night terrors, depression, maybe angry outbursts, and a sustained multi-year pattern of targeted cruelty and radical ideological swings online.
Right, being traumatized doesn't make you systematically cruel for years on end.
Exactly. And then O'Neill drops a reference that blew my mind.
Oh, the therapy comment.
Yes. He says that if Platner's condition makes him wish death upon American soldiers, he doesn't need a Senate seat. He needs ibogaine therapy.
That is such a specific call-out.
It is not a generic insult. That is incredibly specific. Explain exactly what ibogaine is and why O'Neill dropping that specific term carries so much subtext in this dispute.
Okay, so ibogaine is a naturally occurring psychoactive alkaloid. It's extracted from the root bark of the Tabernanthe iboga shrub, which is native to Central Africa.
Okay, so it's a psychedelic.
Yes. In the United States, it is classified as a Schedule I substance, meaning it is illegal and considered to have no accepted medical use.
But veterans are using it.
Yes. Over the last decade, a massive, quiet subculture has emerged within the special operations and broader veteran communities surrounding ibogaine.
Why are they taking it if it's illegal here?
Well, veterans suffering from severe treatment-resistant PTSD and traumatic brain injuries conditions, where the standard cocktail of VA-prescribed antidepressants has completely failed, they have been traveling to clinics in Mexico or other countries to undergo ibogaine therapy.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, the clinical data, while still in its nascent stages due to legal restrictions, suggests that a massive, intense psychedelic trip on ibogaine can act almost like a hard reset for the brain.
A hard reset, like it clears the trauma?
It rapidly interrupts substance addiction and allows individuals to process deeply entrenched trauma without the accompanying emotional terror.
So, by saying ibogaine therapy, O'Neill isn't just telling Platner he's crazy. He's speaking directly in the vernacular of the combat veteran underground.
Precisely. It is an absolute insider nod. O'Neill is essentially saying, I know the landscape of veteran trauma. I know the extreme measures we have to take to heal our minds, and your behavior does not align with the standard struggles of our brothers.
That is so powerful.
He's saying, if your brain is truly so broken that you are cheering for the Taliban to kill Americans, you need the most extreme, borderline experimental psychiatric intervention available to our community, not a legislative office in Washington, D.C.
Man, that just completely destroys the campaign's defense.
It systematically dismantles the attempt to use PTSD as a shield, because O'Neill is leveraging his own unassailable credibility on the topic of veteran health to invalidate Platner's specific symptoms.
But I struggle deeply with what O'Neill does next, though.
The shift in tone.
Yes. He delivers this absolute kill shot, telling the guy to go take underground psychedelics and drop out of the race. But then, in the same breath, he makes this staggering pivot to empathy.
It's very surprising.
O'Neill admits, I've been there. He acknowledges that alcohol might have been a factor in Platner's late-night posting and confesses that he himself used to say dumb stuff when he was drinking.
Which he says is why he got sober.
Right. He explicitly states he is a believer in forgiveness and wants to see how Platner handles himself moving forward. How can O'Neill act as the executioner, declaring Platner entirely unfit and the priest offering absolution in the exact same interview?
Because O'Neill is separating the human being from the political candidate.
Okay, so more about that.
This duality is actually the most sophisticated part of his commentary. As a human being, and as a fellow veteran who has navigated the incredibly difficult transition from high-stakes combat to civilian life, O'Neill recognizes the recognizable pitfalls.
The alcohol, the isolation.
The self-medication, the alcohol, the desperate need for attention, the spiral of online toxicity. His empathy is genuine.
So he really does feel for the guy.
He understands the mechanics of how a veteran can end up in a dark room, drunk, typing hateful things on a keyboard. He wants Platner to find sobriety and peace.
But not a Senate seat.
But, and this is the crucial distinction, understanding the origin of destructive behavior does not mean endorsing the individual for the United States Senate.
Right. You can forgive someone without giving them power.
Exactly. The grace afforded to a struggling veteran cannot override the stringent requirements of public office. O'Neill is holding two truths simultaneously.
Which is hard for a lot of people to do.
It is. He believes Platner deserves human forgiveness and a path to recovery, but his demonstrated lack of judgment, impulse control, and basic loyalty fundamentally disqualifies him from holding immense legislative power over the American public.
That is the crux of the modern dilemma, isn't it?
It really is.
We want to destigmatize mental health. We want to allow people grace for their lowest moments. But a Senate seat is not a participation trophy for a successful rehab stint.
No, it certainly isn't.
It's a job with nuclear launch codes adjacent to it, which brings us to the political machinery.
Ah, yes. The reaction from Washington.
We've looked at the military code, we've analyzed the psychology of the online troll and the medical complexities of trauma. But in the background of all this human drama, there is a cold, calculating, mathematical reality playing out.
The political math.
Yes. How is the party apparatus handling this radioactive candidate?
With absolute coordinated silence.
Shocker.
Right. The Fox News report explicitly notes that the Platner campaign has not returned requests for comment.
Just going dark.
But more significantly, the report details how Democrats in Congress are actively ducking questions regarding Platner.
Literally avoiding reporters.
They are avoiding reporters in the hallways. They are ignoring inquiries from the press pool. This is not accidental. This is the implementation of a highly rigid, historically proven crisis management strategy.
I call it the turtle shell defense.
That's exactly what it is.
When a massive scandal hits a candidate, and that candidate happens to be running for a seat that is mathematically vital for a party to hold the majority in the Senate, the National Party pulls all its limbs inside the shell. They go completely dark.
Yep, they just wait it out.
The mechanics of it are fascinating. The party whips tell the rank-and-file members, do not engage, do not offer a quote. If they ask you about Platner, pivot to the economy.
Just stick to the talking points.
They hunker down in the dark and wait for the 24-hour news cycle to inevitably find a new, shinier controversy to obsess over. It's a game of sheer endurance, betting that the public's outrage fatigue will kick in before Election Day.
The turtle shell defense is rooted in a brutal risk-reward matrix. Let's examine the choices available to National Party figures like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, whom O'Neill specifically calls out in the report.
Okay, let's look at their options.
If Schumer steps up to a microphone and publicly condemns Platner's comments, but still supports his candidacy, Schumer becomes the face of political hypocrisy.
Right, because he's supporting someone he just admitted did something terrible.
Exactly, validating the opposition's attacks. If Schumer goes further and demands that Platner drop out of the race, the party risks losing a highly contested Senate seat in Maine.
And that seat is crucial.
It could mathematically cost them control of the entire chamber, the ability to confirm federal judges, and the power to pass legislation.
So they literally can't say anything.
Therefore, acknowledging the scandal in any capacity is a losing move. Silence starves the media of new oxygen.
If you don't give a quote, there's no story.
Right. If the leadership refuses to comment, reporters have no new quotes to build a follow-up story around. This scandal is deprived of momentum.
And it works, unfortunately.
And it is crucial to recognize that this tactic is ideologically agnostic. Both major political parties employed the exact same strategy of coordinated evasion when a critical seat is on the line and their candidate becomes toxic.
Oh, totally. We've seen it on both sides. O'Neill observes this silence and formulates a very specific theory, though.
He does. The grooming theory.
Yes. He doesn't just think the party is embarrassed. He claims Platner is actively being groomed.
That's a very loaded word to use.
It is. O'Neill argues that Platner is being propped up by a political machine that cares absolutely nothing about the American people, but cares exclusively about securing the Senate majority.
Just looking at the math.
He says figures like Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer will simply pretend they didn't see it. But that word groomed, in this context, it strips Platner of his agency.
What do you mean by that?
O'Neill is suggesting that Platner isn't a grassroots leader who made some mistakes. He's a manufactured vessel, a guy with a nice resume, bullet combat veteran, who was selected by party elites purely because he polled well.
And they'll ignore everything else.
Right. And they are perfectly willing to drag his deeply compromised character across the finish line just to get his vote on the Senate floor.
O'Neill's theory really highlights the industrialization of the modern political campaign.
It's a machine.
It is. In highly contested states, candidates are heavily vetted, focus grouped, and funded by massive national super PACs before they even announce their run.
It's all calculated.
The candidate becomes an investment vehicle for the party's war chest. O'Neill is articulating the deep cynicism that many voters feel toward this process.
Because it feels so fake.
He is suggesting that the party apparatus views the American electorate with such contempt that they believe they can simply ignore a candidate's history of cheering for wounded soldiers and sporting Nazi tattoos, so long as the candidate has a D or an R next to their name on the ballot.
As long as they get the seat.
The silence of the national figures isn't just self-preservation, you know. According to O'Neill, it is an act of complicity in attempting to defraud the voters of Maine by hiding the true nature of the person they are funding.
Wow. We have journeyed through an incredibly dense landscape today.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We started by examining the terrifying permanence of the digital footprint and how the invisible ink of the internet can expose a chaotic, violently contradictory persona from Antifa rhetoric to Nazi iconography, hiding beneath the polished exterior of a Senate candidate.
It's a lot to take in.
We explored the rigid, unyielding ethos of military brotherhood and why a national hero like Robert O'Neill stepped in to publicly excommunicate a fellow veteran for violating the deepest taboos of combat survival.
That military code is strong.
We unpacked the intense complexities of the PTSD defense, the highly specific veteran subtext of ibogaine therapy, and the tension between offering human forgiveness and demanding political accountability.
Which is such a difficult line to walk.
And finally, we pulled back the curtain on the cold, mathematical calculus of the turtle shell defense, where national party leaders will ignore the most radioactive behavior imaginable if condemning it costs them a majority in Congress.
And as we close this analysis, it is essential to reiterate the framework we established at the beginning.
Always good to remind everyone.
This entire deep dive has been an exercise in dissecting the mechanics of a political and cultural implosion, relying strictly on the May 2026 reporting from Fox News Digital.
Right, just sticking to the facts provided.
We have analyzed the sociology, the military psychology, and the political strategy without adopting a partisan stance, endorsing the critics, or condemning the candidate. Our purpose was to provide you with the comprehensive underlying mechanisms that drive a scandal of this complexity.
Absolutely. And as you walk away from this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question that extends far beyond Graham Platner or the state of Maine.
I love these final thoughts.
We have officially entered an era where the generation stepping into power has lived their entire lives online.
Everything is recorded.
Every dark joke, every impulsive late-night forum comment, every momentary lapse in judgment, and every profound ideological contradiction is permanently archived on servers,
Just waiting to be found.
waiting for the blacklight of opposition research to be turned on. So when the digital footprint of every single candidate is inevitably exposed, are we rapidly approaching a reality where absolutely no one is left with a clean enough slate to survive a run for public office?
That is a scary thought.
Or, out of sheer necessity, will our collective societal standard for what disqualifies a leader be forced to fundamentally change?
We might just have to get used to it.
Are we going to demand perfect pasts? Or are we going to be forced to accept that the future will be governed by deeply flawed people whose worst moments are public record?
It's a huge shift in how we view leadership.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on the next time a perfectly scripted political thriller unfolds on your timeline.